Garrus Vakarian was a Turian in his early 30s, born on his homeworld of Polyvin. Like all Turians, Garrus was given military training at the age of 15. When he reached adulthood, in step with his father, he became a Citadel security officer, investigating and handling criminals. He would often take justice into his own hands, not always following the rulebook of the CSEC officers. Later in life, he would even go as far as to become a personal vigilante against the criminal-ridden space station Omega. During his time at CSEC, however, he would go on to investigate an alleged rogue Spectre named Saren. His investigation brought him into contact with Commander Shepard, who invited him on his team. Together, Garrus, Shepard, and the rest of his crew would uncover Saren's plot, as well as the impending invasion from an ancient race called the Reapers. Garrus would become a very integral part of Shepard's crew, giving over his military skills, tech abilities, and field experience. Thane Krios was a Drell in his early 40s, born on the Hanar homeworld of Kage. At the age of 6, his parents gave him to the Hanar species to be trained as an assassin. This was in line of the unwritten contract between the Drell and the Hanar, whom saved them from their overpopulous world. Krios would make his first kill at the age of 12. Eventually, the Hanar would relieve Thane from his duties as an assassin. However, Thane would go on to freelance his services, as he had no other skill but to kill. He would go on to marry and have a son, though his work would keep him away from them. During one of his away missions, his wife was murdered in retaliation for one of his hits. In revenge, Krios killed every single person involved with his wife's murder, leaving no one untouched. Though he was an assassin, he remained very religious, praying before and after his assassinations. He would go on to meet Commander Shepard, who would recruit him for a suicide mission through the Omega-4 relay. Thane would agree, knowing he was already dying from Kepler's syndrome. Thane would become an important part of Shepard's crew, supplying his superb skill in stealth combat. As with all my Versus videos, I will be comparing these two in their primes. For Garrus, this would be his time on Omega when he took up being a personal vigilante, taking justice against the many gangs on the space station. For Thane, his prime would probably be during the time of his personal vendetta against those who killed his wife. Garrus Vakarian stood over 2 meters tall, normal for the Turian species. Turians were known for their strong exoskeletons to protect them against their homeworld's radiation due to its weak ozone layer. However, this did not mean their exoskeletons were immune to laser or bullet projectiles, merely a resistance to radiation. Though their body would be able to repel standard hand-to-hand combat scenarios, their feet and hands were talon-like, able to rip through flesh at close range. What's more, they were known for their impeccable eyesight. Their slender builds also suggested they were very speedy in a full sprint. Garrus held all these attributes, and he was only in his early 30s, still in the prime of his species. Though he had lethal talons, he never entered in too much hand-to-hand combat. He benefited most from his species' great eyesight, using it to snipe most of his foes at long distance. And though he is never shown in a full sprint, we can infer he was relatively swift and agile. All in all, Garrus was a tough opponent for any species in his physical realm. Thane Krios stood at around 2 meters tall. Drell were very similar to human and Asari body structure, except for their muscles, which were more dense than both. Drells also seemed to be a very swift and agile species, as evidenced by Thane's ability to traverse the Ilium mercenary base without notice. We could also assume that Drell had great eyesight, as most Drell assassins would use snipers for their missions. Most of all, Drell had impeccable memories, which was a biological evolution for their ancestors to recall locations of food and water. Thane would express this when he told Shepard he could recall every single assassination he completed to the smallest detail. Despite that, the ability was sometimes involuntary and uncontrollable. However, Drell were susceptible to extensive exposure to humid climates and would often fall victim to the Kerpal syndrome. Still, any Drell would give any other species a hard time in a good fight, and Thane was no different. In fact, Thane was probably the most pronounced version of the Drell species. Garrus and Thane were in fantastic shape for their species and ages, though, of course, Thane had a disease in the background. However, in Mass Effect 3, when he was near death due to his illness, Thane took on a much younger assassin and kept up with him. Even though we do not have many examples of Garrus in hand-to-hand combat, we have to assume he has some. If his culture put 15-year-olds in mandatory military training, one would have to assume he could take care of himself had he lost his guns. That, coupled with his species' large talons, would make him a formidable opponent against any species that wasn't a Krogan. Still, Thane specialized in his physical abilities, especially physical combat. He had over 4 decades of training and experience with close combat, taking on multiple opponents. Therefore, I have to give the edge to Thane Krios in regards to physical ability. Garrus Vakarian was classified as a Turian agent, which shared attributes with the Infiltrator class aside from their preference to assault rifles rather than pistols. Turian agents were tech-savvy warriors able to win battles by way of disruption and combat. They preferred taking the rear of the group, standing back for optimal position as a sniper. As a Turian agent, Garrus would have an affinity for maintaining weapons, keeping them in good shape and recommending optimal upgrades for them. However, Turian agents were weak in their defense, preferring an adrenaline boost to immunity. Vakarian's preferred weapon by far was his sniper rifle, which was slow on the draw but highly accurate. Garrus' use of the sniper rifle would enable him to hold off several Omega gangs single-handedly for several days. However, he was not beholden to a sniper rifle, as he would always have an assault rifle at his side. Assault rifles were the most versatile weapons of the Mass Effect universe, able to be devastating at short, medium, and even sometimes long ranges. When pressed, Garrus would pull out his assault rifle for medium to close combat. Thane Krios was classified as a Drell assassin, which held strong attributes for vitality and weapon damage. Drell assassins were stealth-based hitmen, able to win skirmishes through surprise and speed. They preferred only 2 approaches to battle, very far or up close. Both procedures were suited for optimal bewilderment of their target, never letting them know where they were coming from. As a Drell assassin, Thane would be extremely hardy with an aptitude for pain resistance and effectiveness in his kills. Because of his line of work, we could deduce that Thane had an extensive knowledge on other species' biology, including, most notably, their strengths, and even more so, their weaknesses. Thane's preferred weapon would be his own 2 hands, swift, fast, and flawless killing tools. His secondary weapons were his long-range sniper rifle and his close to mid-range submachine gun. Though he favored his hands, his second choice was probably a sniper rifle, as it was quick and easy for assassinations. And while he did use a submachine gun, which was noted to have a high fire rate yet little accuracy, he rarely missed with it. That, coupled with his high damage enhancing upgrades to his guns, would give him an edge with his weaponry. However, against experienced foes, his submachine gun skills would be less than perfect, as showcased with his fight against Kai Lang. Don't get me wrong though, I do recognize that he was only at a third of his strength at the time. Garrus and Thane were seasoned marksmen in their own right. Garrus utilized his sniper rifle and assault rifle to great effect, pushing back hordes of enemies in his career. Thane did not use his sniper rifle as much, but he was a surgeon with his submachine gun, ending multiple foes' life in an instant. Their tactical mindsets, however, were extremely different. Garrus preferred to work in a group and often took position in a sniper perch. Thane, by contrast, often worked alone and preferred getting up close and personal for his kill. He remained stealthy, stalking his hit until he was ready to pounce. Really, it comes down to who would see who first. If Garrus got the drop on Thane, he would be deft enough to get a shot off at him at distance. But if Garrus missed, or if Thane was able to sneak around him unnoticed, he would not be able to defend against him at close range. Giving the edge to either combatant would be extremely circumstantial. Thus, I cannot give the definitive edge to either. I deem both Garrus Vakarian and Thane Krios as equals in terms of their combat abilities. Garrus Vakarian had many abilities at his use. He made good use of his overload ability, which enabled him to disable enemy weapons and shields for a short while. He likely used this ability, coupled with his skill with sniper rifles, to get off quick shots on his opponents. His assault rifle was upgraded with a concussive shot, a high-powered round. The power of the round was similar to a power of a shotgun, sending even heavy armored foes off their feet. Nevertheless, the concussive shot had less spread than a shotgun. Garrus would have used his concussive shot at close range to finish off an enemy after he took down their shields. What's more, Vakarian's sniper and assault rifle were equipped with armor-piercing ammo, able to penetrate most medium and heavy-duty armors. However, armor-piercing ammo had little effect on enemy shields. Garrus would have to penetrate their shields first before his ammo became effective to their armor. Thane Krios carried several tricks up his own sleeve. He had a skill in biotics, allowing him to use telekinetic-like abilities. Some beings would even add amplifiers to their biology to enhance their biotic output, though it is not clear if Thane used any amplifiers to enhance his. His first biotic ability was the most basic throw, which was used strategically and defensively. Its basic principle was to throw one's enemies back, toppling them over. Depending on the user, it was also used indirectly, with the user using their ability to throw objects at their foe. Advanced users, however, could deal significant damage to their opponents, throwing them into walls or over ledges. However, I feel Thane was only an intermediate user of this ability, as he was more geared to his physical abilities. Nonetheless, he did use another biotic ability called Warp, an offensive power that dealt damage and also inhibited health regeneration. Thane's weapons were also equipped with shredder ammo, which did extra damage to non-armored and unshielded foes. Most likely, he used this ability to finish off his opponents, but it would be very difficult for him because none of his other abilities were especially designed to bring down armor or shields. Garrus and Thane both had additional skill sets to complement their physical and combat abilities. Most of Garrus' abilities enhanced his tech and combat abilities. He was especially effective against enemies that relied on their shields and weapons. This, of course, would not be effective against Thane. Krios, who was extremely effective without a weapon and did not rely heavily on his shields, would not be deterred. Thane also had his own abilities with biotics and special shredder ammo. Though his biotics would be potentially devastating to Garrus, his shredder ammo would not. Garrus often wore medium to heavy armor during combat, which would repel Thane's shredder ammo easily. Furthermore, Thane's biotics were not as powerful as an Asari adept, and he often used it defensively rather than offensively. Thus, Garrus would not have too much trouble dealing with his biotic powers. Instead, it would be Garrus' edge with a concussive shot and armor-piercing ammo that would be extremely effective against Thane. If Krios slipped up for even 1 second, a hit from a concussive shot with ammo-piercing ammo would be devastating. Even though Thane had many useful special abilities, his biotics were nothing to write home about, and his shredder ammo would be ineffective. Garrus would get the edge with his concussive shots coupled with his powerful ammo. Therefore, I must give the edge to Garrus Vakarian in terms of his special abilities. A skirmish between Garrus Vakarian and Thane Krios would be a battle between two tactical dichotomies. Garrus, who often worked in a squad or team, would rely more on tactical position. Though, when pressed, he was able to handle himself, as showcased with his battle with the Omega gangs. Thane, on the other hand, preferred a stealthy approach, catching his hits off guard, disappearing into the environment. However, he still held a skill with a sniper rifle and was a surgeon with a submachine gun close range. If I were to paint a picture of their fight, I would set it up during Garrus' conflict with the Omega gangs. Let's say the Black Suns decided to hire outside help. The man they hire is Thane Krios. Thus, Garrus would have the tactical advantage in his sniper perch with a choke point. Thane would approach the only way he could, straight up the middle. However, I think he would use his biotics to throw objects between he and Garrus' viewpoint. Garrus may be able to get a shot off and may even hit Thane with a flesh wound, but Thane would make it past the choke point. At this point, Garrus would switch to his assault rifle and the scenario would change to a stealth match. Thane would get the jump on Garrus, disarming Garrus of his assault rifle. Thane would shoot him point blank with his submachine gun, but to no avail as he would be wearing heavy armor. With his huge talon, Garrus would hit Thane back. Then they would engage in hand-to-hand combat. Ultimately, it comes down to this one fact. When you want a platoon led in battle, Garrus is your man. When you want one man killed, you hire Thane Krios. Thus, Thane would win the hand-to-hand exchange, defeating Garrus. And therefore, I declare Thane Krios, the Galactic Drell Assassin, the victor. Of course, this is all my opinion. Please leave your thoughts and comments below. Discussion is my favorite part, especially with new Versus series. Peace, love, and this is my favorite YouTube channel on the Citadel.